This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
Right, all right. We're here with KYRON Samuel from Sports Illustrated. We just talked about defensive tackles. Now let's get into some of these SEC quarterbacks. And you can't talk about SEC quarterbacks in this draft without talking about Mr. Milroe.
Yeah, man.
He's fascinating because he's so fast on TV that when I saw he ran 4.44 or something like that,
So they reported it 4.37 from the school, but when I was texting the guys over there, the scout that I was talking to, some people did have him as low as 4.39, but the majority, the consensus that they went was around the 4.42 to 4.46 area, so they settled on 4.44 as his official time. So you look in the books, it'll be a 4.44 for Milroe.
Which you were at the pro day, right?
Yes, which is insane. Just because it's not a 4.39 or 4.37, whatever they said it was, it's not a slight. 4.44 is ridiculous for anybody, let alone a 220-pound quarterback. So it's ridiculous. He's a freak.
He's so athletic that I was like, only 4.44, and I had to remind myself. I'm like, dog, RG3 ran like a 4.5, 6 or something like that, or it was what RG3 was 4.46 or something like that.
Something like that, man.
It was like high 4.4, but
so 4.44 is nuts, man.
It's crazy.
To context, he's running like him and Bijan Robinson are the same speed, same size. But actually, he's 10 pounds heavier than Bijan Robinson. So think about how athletic and how gifted we think of Bijan Robinson. And Jalen Milroe is faster than that guy, and he weighs 10, 15 pounds more. That's the type of athleticism that he possesses as a quarterback. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember I was watching the South Carolina tape, and you see one play, they try to beat Nick Emery to the edge with Jam Miller, and it doesn't work, right? Okay, he gets there pretty easily, and then they do the same thing, run right at him with Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe easily just gets that first down, gets that corner. I'm like, this guy has unreal speed, and I think that's the interesting thing about Jalen Milroe is this, right? Cam Ward, I don't know if Cam Ward, you could say he'll jump into the league and have elite arm talent. He has really, really good arm talent, right? Shador, a really accurate passer. I don't think he's going to jump into the league, be one of the most accurate guys in the league, right? Jalen Milroe is going to be one of the most athletic guys in the NFL at the quarterback position. He's going to be in that elite athleticism conversation already immediately, day one. He's not as where do you see him as a passer? Because when I watch him, I don't think he's as far. I don't think he needs as much work as some people make it out to be, but I do think he needs work. So it's a hard balance there.
To me, he's a guy, and this is going to be funny to say, I think he plays from within the pocket too much sometimes. I think he's too much of he thinks too hard. He's a guy that wants hey, if the scouting manual or the scouting sheet this week says, hey, they're a too high team, they don't rotate the safeties a lot, he's going to be a guy that sticks by that because he studies his ass off. He goes by the book. He wants to be as coachable as possible. To me, he's handcuffed by that sometimes. To me, he plays too robotic with one of the most fluid, freakish athletic abilities we've ever seen. So I think his thing is decision making. I think he thinks too much sometimes. He doesn't have a lack of processing ability. If you watch him play, if you watch through the tape, he's getting to 2 and 3 that reads that is multiple times. He's done it. He's shown he could do it on tape. Everybody knows he can throw the ball deep. He has a very good deep ball. The ball flies out of his hand, and when he throws the ball into tight windows, to me, he has those decisions. And this is we talked about it, and I hate to I'm not liking him to this guy, but when Josh Allen was coming out, people were talking about the turnover. When Jalen Hurts were coming out, people were talking about he makes bad decisions or he can't throw the ball on an intermediate level. To me, a lot of his issues are correctable. It's footwork, it's timing. He's still raw as a starter at quarterback. I mean, when he played Alabama, he started 2 seasons, and he had a different offensive coordinator for both seasons, different offensive line for both seasons, different coaching staff as a starter. He's a guy that went through the ringer in terms of, and this is the same thing that happened to Jalen Hurts, same thing that happened to Justin Herbert. We've seen guys that went through that process, but to me, the biggest thing, and this is what I like to harp on with Milroe, is that we've seen guys that have the same issues that he has, without a shred of that athleticism and without a shred of that production. So he has the athleticism and the athletic profile, and he has produced on the biggest of stages in college football. You know, he has over 7,000 career yards. I mean, he threw for 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 2023, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions this year. But then he had 20 rushing touchdowns this year and 726 yards. And then he had 12 rushing touchdowns in 2023. So he's the guy with 33 career rushing touchdowns in less than 3 seasons as a starter. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. If you look at his production at Alabama, he's one of the most productive players in Alabama history. And it feels like almost that because they didn't win a national championship or they fell short a little bit this past season without Nick Saban, it feels like his career is kind of looked at as in a negative light in some ways. When you look at him on paper, he's as productive and he's won an SEC championship. He's beaten Georgia twice. The Georgia Bulldogs that, you know, for the last 3 years, they've been the standard of college football. Even though they haven't won a national championship since 2022, they have the least amount of losses. They have the most wins. They've been, you know, to the playoffs more than anybody else. They've been the standard, and they can't do anything with this guy. You look at the LSU games; they can't do anything with this guy.
No, LSU can't do nothing with them.
Texas A&M, 2023, he goes into to Kyle Field at Texas A&M and throws for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. You know, he's a guy that's shown at his peak looks like a guy that could be the number 1 quarterback in the draft. And then you have the games like, you know, the first half of the South Carolina game where he was looking great. Then he throws the interception late. It's like some of the processes, like not processing ability, some of the decision making, like when he took the safety in the end zone at the end of the first half. Then he throws the pick the next drive. It's some of those decision makings. And then you look at the Tennessee game where he just flat out was missing throws. It wasn't like a bad game in terms of, you know, processing or getting the ball where he needs to. He just missed throws, and you know, you can't have that in those type of situations. So those games, you look at him and you're like, should this guy even be starting at Alabama? And then he has another game after that, like the LSU game, where he looks like the best player in college football again. So getting that consistency is the biggest thing for him. To me, the landing spot that I would love, I know y'all love, I know some of the Brown fans love him. I would love to see him in Las Vegas with Chip Kelly. I like to see him sit for a year or 2 behind Geno Smith and learn and get comfortable and grow. And I think what Chip Kelly could do with that kid in a couple of years could be pretty crazy, especially if they were to draft a guy like Ginty, 6th overall, which is what I would do if I was, you know, the Las Vegas Raiders. Imagine, you know, 3 years from now, you got Jalen Milroe starting at quarterback and Ashton Ginty at running back, the type of stuff that you could do with Chip Kelly. Like, that's pretty crazy with Brock Bowers at a tight end. So I think there's a place for him in the NFL, and I think there's a place for him to play and contribute immediately, like you said, because of his athletic profile. Even if he's not the starting quarterback, let's say he goes to a team like the Raiders or the Browns and there's another starter, you're going to get him on the field some kind of way because of that running ability, even if it's just a red zone package, even if it's just short yardage.
Yeah, and I always bring this point up. Every year, we're like, man, this guy's a project. He's going to take a while. We got to wait on the super athletic guy. And then that guy ends up like being ready because he's like, well, it turns out just being a really good athlete makes you ready for the NFL, right? That happened to Bryce. With Bryce, it was like, oh, we thought Bryce was going to be kind of ready earlier. But then Bryce, it took a little bit for him to get back to where he looks like Bryce Young again, where, like, you know, Josh Allen was another one. Lamar Jackson is the ultimate one of these, right? Whereas like Lamar, nobody thought he would play year 1. He comes in year 1 and he ends up like saving John Harbaugh's job. So, you know, that ability for him, like, to run, like, there's a quarterback in the class that can move like that and is skilled as a runner as he is. I think that's the other part about it too. He's not just fast; he knows how to use that speed.
Bro, I'll tell you this before we move on from this one. I think this is in November. I was talking to some NFL scouts. You know, there's teams that had him as high as quarterback 2, and there's still some teams that do have him as high as quarterback 2. But there's a few teams that have him running back 3 in this class. So think about all the good running backs in this class. And to me, it was kind of disrespectful as hell. But at the same time, it was like a compliment of the highest order because look at all the running backs that are in this class. They had him as high as running back 3 behind Ashton Ginty and Omarion Hampton. That's how much they believe in his athletic ability as a pure runner. If you were to take the quarterback off of his name, they would still have a late first round, early second round grade on him as a running back. That's how much people believe in his athletic ability. So whoever he goes, I can't imagine if he's not the starter that he wouldn't have a package somewhere running the football.
Sounds like he's not going to make it out the top 40. Right?
I mean, it's hard to say, man, but I do truly believe depending on what Aaron Rodgers, what happens with him. If he goes to Pittsburgh, I think it probably forces the Darts and the Milroes of the world to maybe fall a little bit. But if Aaron Rodgers retires and you have a team that's a little bit more desperate, like the Pittsburgh Steelers that may trade up, that could force somebody else's hand that's looking for a quarterback, I think you might see a run on quarterbacks in this first round that people would be shocked by.
All right. Well, speaking of quarterbacks, we talked a lot about Jalen Milroe. He's not the only quarterback in the SEC this year. Another guy who has popped up. I think me and you feel differently about this man, Jaxson Dart. Right. What do you make of the rise of Jaxson Dart? I mean, I will say this. I have seen you be up on Jaxson Dart before most people were, right?
Right.
But it does seem like a lot of people really started pumping Jaxson Dart well after the football season ended.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is the Dart stuff, and I get it. You trust me, I understand the drawbacks that some people have as well. The only thing I don't like is that people will make these comments about the offensive system that he played in. They're like, well, it's an easy offense, it's a one-read offense, it's a half-field read offense. They don't do much. I'm like, yeah, 5-10 years ago, that would be valid. This is the NFL, bro. Have people really been paying attention to what's going on in the NFL? And I love Patrick Mahomes. I'm actually not a Patrick Mahomes fan. I'm not gonna lie. I respect Patrick Mahomes a lot. Do people really see what that offense? And I know a lot of it is due to personnel now. They are a one-read offense. They are a quick game offense. Get the ball out of their hands quick. A half-field offense most of the time. I know the Eagles are supremely talented. It's the inverse of the Chiefs conversation here. Mm-hmm. But they run an extremely simple offensive system. Jalen Hurts doesn't throw the ball over the middle of the field very often. It's very much a one side of the field, quick game offense with deep shots mixed in. Who's to say a quarterback like Dart that comes from a system like that with Lane Kiffin can't succeed? The Steelers just won 10 games with a screen pass, deep ball, and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, there are so many different – look at what – I love Matthew Stafford and McVay and their offensive wizardry, but a lot of it is extremely simple. Getting the ball out quick, play action pass, is basic West Coast fundamentals. To me, that is what Jaxson Dart can exceed at. What NFL is running now, these West Coast systems. You have a guy like Sean McVay. You have a guy like Kevin O'Connell. You have obviously Kyle Shanahan out there. These guys, and even Ben Johnson to a certain degree. That's what Jaxson Dart does well. Those type of reads, those type of systems, I think he would be totally fine in, especially if you're not asking him to come be the guy day one. So to me, I do think he's been a little bit propped up more than he should be. Some of the stuff I've seen, middle of the first round, even late first round, I'm not fully there. I don't truly understand that, but I understand that the quarterback market, people are desperate for quarterbacks. They may overreach, like we talked about a little bit earlier. You might overreach on a guy like Dart. But I think if you can get him in the second round, I think he would be well worth the second round pick. I think he has the fundamentals in terms of the arm talent, the discipline. I like his pocket footwork more than people give him credit for. He was in a lot of muddy pockets at Ole Miss when they did go deep passing game. I think he's a lot better fundamentally than people give him credit for. And I think a lot of the drawbacks are just antiquated. It's like, what can he do well? And can we find a system for him in the NFL where those abilities are going to be highlighted? And to me, the answer is yes. You have a guy like Jalen Hurts. You have a guy like Kyler Murray to a certain extent. All these guys are flourishing in the NFL and having good careers. Kyler Murray and those guys haven't had a ton of winning, but Kyler Murray, nobody would say he's not a starting quarterback, a very good starting quarterback in the NFL. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler, over 12,000 career yards in like 5 years. Nobody would say he's not a very good quarterback in the NFL. So to me, I'm not saying Dart's going to be one of those guys, but I can see a plan for him being successful on the next level.
Do you think he has to be a similar athlete to how Jalen Hurts is or Kyler or some of these guys that we mentioned in order to be able to run a more simplified system at that NFL level? Like, do you think that might be a big hang up for him? Because he's not a bad athlete. I don't want to make it out there like he's a bad athlete. But it's like he's not like Jalen Hurts, right? Like coming out.
Yeah, I don't think he's the athlete Hurts is, but I think he's a good athlete. I think he's a much better athlete than he's given credit for. And this is what funny stuff about Lane Kiffin's offense that people don't really highlight enough. He runs the hell out of his quarterbacks. The quarterback run game is a huge part of the offensive structure there at Ole Miss. Matt Corral, I remember he ran the ball like 31 times at Tennessee one year, and then Dart is running the ball 16, 17 times a game sometimes. So I think Dart is a good enough athlete where he's he's a better athlete than I would say half of the starters that are going to be starting now. If I was liking him to a guy that was starting now, I think he's a little bit, probably a little bit more athletic than a guy like Tua. Because Tua, let's think about when Tua first came in the league. He was very, he could scramble, make stuff happen. But I think what separates Dart is that he's a tough player. Like, he will run you over. He's a guy that will run through the contact. He's a guy that's built different. He is literally 4 or 5 pounds heavier than Jalen Milroe. Same height, both 6'2", but Dart is a little bit heavier than Milroe is. So if you kind of think about his frame, you may not think about it because he doesn't look like put together like a Milroe is, but he has the frame for it. So I think he's a player that is a bit underrated in everything that he does, and a little bit overvalued because of that, if that makes sense. Like, he's a little bit underrated, and people kind of watching the tape and seeing that now, so they may overvalue him a little bit because how weak the class is. But I think he's a guy that second round, I think, is his place. Sit him. He may not ever start. But I think he's the guy that should be sitting behind Matt Stafford. If the Rams can get him in the second round, I think that's a great place for him to go learn behind Sean McVay. Because if anybody can maximize his ability, it would be a Sean McVay.
Now, let's work back to Milroe here, because I think a lot of the talk around Milroe goes about his ceiling, right? People are like, the ceiling on him is incredible. What do you think the ceiling is for a Milroe, like, as we can see right now, right? Because I see sometimes people throw out Lamar. I'm like, there's something natural about Lamar's passing ability that just is not there with Jalen Milroe, right? But I'm like, do you think he get to where Colin Kaepernick was, or a little bit above that? Like, I'm thinking of other guys who threw fastballs, really like not flexible arms, but really strong arms. So like Cap, I feel like there's some pre-injury RG3 in there too. Like, even though I think RG3 was a better, more accurate passer than Milroe was at Baylor, right, by a margin. But it's the athletic ability. I think Jalen Milroe, I think, was a better, like, open field runner than RG3 was, because RG3 was a straight line speed. Yeah.
This is funny. I never thought about this until you asked me. A name that just keeps popping to my head when you say ceiling. I think about what prime Dante Culpepper was with the Vikings, where his ability, he wasn't necessarily the most efficient passer. He wasn't necessarily the most accurate passer in the intermediate range, but he could extend plays and he could throw the ball down the field. And if you have the guys that can maximize that skill set in terms of those deep field passing guys, everybody ain't going to have a Randy Moss and Chris Carter and those type of guys to throw to. But I think he can, if he adds 10 pounds. I think he can add about 10 pounds to his frame and really be that bowling ball in the run game, because his athleticism is not going anywhere with 10 pounds, especially with technology these days, the nutrition systems. He can gain a solid 10 pounds of muscle and put it on the right way over the course of 6-8 months. I think he can bulk up a little bit and be a tank of a player, even more than he is now. And he can improve a little bit in that intermediate passing game. To me, if you look at best case scenario for him, that would be great. Dante Culpepper was one of the better quarterbacks in the league for a few years. Donovan McNabb is a name that popped in my head as well, but Donovan McNabb was such a natural, gifted passer. I think that's like, I don't think that's Milroe in that a bit in that terms, because of how smooth and accurate Donovan McNabb could be. But that's another name that pops into my head. Maybe if he takes another step and he kind of refines some of his technical ability with his feet, because his arm is plenty talented. You can make a case has the most arm talent out of any quarterback in the class. You talk about his arm strength, his ball placement on deep balls, some of the stuff that he's able to do when he's throwing on the run. He has as much arm talent as anybody in the class, but kind of refining that and making it a little bit more natural and making the feet follow, the natural gifted ability that he has. Donovan McNabb is another best case. Donovan McNabb is another best case scenario name that kept popping in my head.
Yeah, the more I watch Milroe, the more I'm like, I think you could fix it. I don't know if that's just me wanting to hope that we could fix quarterback because we got Deshaun Watson out there in the boot right now, or if it's like something there. Like, I think him and Stefanski's offense could work, even though it ain't gonna do nothing for that thing you got a problem with him about, where he can sometimes be a little bit too robotic. Kevin's gonna be like, nah, I like that. Like,
that's true.
Do just what I say, right? Like, I wonder if that's gonna be something that where a team pops up that we're not even like thinking about right now, where they're like, nah, we think that this could be like, do you think a Kyle Shanahan looks at him and gets intrigued?
Interesting. That's an interesting prospect. I think anybody, right? Like, any coach with any balls, which is all of them, every coach thinks they're the smartest guy to ever touch a pen and a pad and game plan. I think most coaches would, and this is what I want people to understand too. Like when you hear somebody talk about through NFL scouts or NFL personnel, the way personnel and scouts think, as opposed to like actual coaches that are doing the game planning and doing the fundamental stuff on a day-to-day basis, is totally different. A scout's job is like to find everything and nitpick with you, everything that's good about you, and come to a conclusion. So sometimes the bad may outweigh the good. If you've done it for enough time, they'll see enough, red flags where they'll be like, I'm out on this guy. A coach thinks they can fix anybody with talent and ability. And there's not many guys that have come across in the last 5 to 10 years that have more talent and ability than a Jalen Milroe. So yeah, to answer your question, man, I think any coach that believes in their ability will see a talent like that and think that they can mold it and do something great with it.
And, he's been doing a lot of work with Jordan Palmer over the last couple of years. I think he's made a big point of it this offseason. When you were you were able to see him at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if you were at the Combine, but you also got to see him at his pro day. Yeah. What does it look like he's working on, and how do you feel about the work that he's done so far, to kind of get better? I think he's been trying to be a little bit more consistent with his throw motion.
Yeah, and he is a little bit leaner too. And I just mentioned that he maybe can bulk up depending on where he goes. But he's a little bit leaner. He's about 10 pounds lighter than what he played at Alabama. I know that he came into the Combine around 221, I believe, and then he came in the pro day at about 217. But he played closer to 230 when he was at Bama. He got as big as 235 at one time. So he is a lot leaner to me. He looks like he worked on it, so maybe he can run a little bit faster, and he looks a little bit more fluid throwing the football. But to me, he has worked on his footwork more than anything. That's his biggest hang up, because when his feet are on track, when his feet are set and he sets his feet, he throws the ball as pretty as anybody when everything is in chain. But that's the problem. Consistently having that chain, he hasn't been the best with that. So he's been working on that, and he looks a lot better than he looked at the Senior Bowl. I thought his first 2 days at the Senior Bowl were unsatisfactory, and then you look at the last day at the Senior Bowl, he looked like maybe one of the better quarterbacks there. He finally had that day that people were expecting from him, and then he took that momentum and he rode it into the Combine, where he looked a little bit better. He still missed on some throws down the field, some of the stuff, and a lot of that is just you don't know those guys. You're throwing with those players for the first time. You don't know how they like to break or what they do. So some of that is just miscommunication there. But I thought he looked improved at the Combine, and then he goes to the pro day. He looked even better at the pro day. So he's steadily gotten better, and it's just refining the small details with Jalen Milroe. You don't know what system he's going to go to yet. You don't know what scheme he's going to go to yet. But the details in terms of his technical ability is what's going to have to continue to improve for him to have the success he needs to on the next level. And he looks like he's taking a good step with that.
Last thing I want to ask you, what do you make of these intangibles with Jalen Milroe? Because like everybody who gets close to him, at least coaches, they love the dude. Like they go out their way to talk about, like Jordan Palmer, like raves about him. He raves about everybody he coaches that he likes too. But what do you make of those things? The work ethic, right? Like the stuff like he graduated, got his master's degree in like 4 years at Alabama. Like when you're looking at somebody who you do project as a project needs to be able to be coachable, does he pass those checks from what you've seen during his career at Alabama as somebody who can be coached and can take in information and get better?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you hear what Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan, the guys that have coached him this past season, have said about him, and even when you go back to Nick Saban, and Nick Saban had a lot of glowing things to say about him. In his previous, Tommy Reese is the guy that just took a job with the with the Cleveland Browns. He speaks extremely highly of Milroe, and I think that says a lot. When you have different coaches come in, different staffs, different styles, and they all say the same thing about you, that says a lot about your character and how consistent you are. But I think more importantly, you should look at what the team did for him in 2023 after the Texas game where he got benched essentially versus South Florida. He went out there and he did his thing as a leader, and he still showed up. And that team pretty much quit. They were good enough to have more talent than South Florida, so they eked out a win. But that team essentially put their foot down to Nick Saban, not just any coach, to Nick Saban, and said, "This is our guy. This is the guy we're riding with." And to me, you don't do that for a guy that doesn't have the locker room, doesn't have the trust and the belief of his teammates. So that said more to me than anything a coach could have said or a scout could have said or a family member. The fact that his team was like, this is our guy, we ride with him. To Nick Saban of all people, said everything I needed to know about Jalen Milroe, and they all attested that work ethic as well. Showing up at 4:00 to watch film, like that's unnecessary. Like you don't have to do stuff like that to be successful, but that's how much he wanted it. That's how much he saw it. And you said he graduated with this degree in 3 years and then got a master's degree in 4 years. Like that's the type of guy he is. That's how hard he works. He's doing all that and showing up at 4:00 in the morning to watch film because he just wants to get better. So absolutely, he can be coached. Absolutely, I think he's a guy that's going to be good for any locker room. And I think that his teammates will ride for him no matter what.
I always think of this when I'm like, that dude must have incredible work ethic because, like, I couldn't get a master's degree and look like Jalen Milroe without having to play football, right? Like, there's no way I could put in that much work that it must take to look like Jalen Milroe on top of, like, just taking a full course load. And he's doing all of that and then being the starting quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Wow. Switching offensive coordinators almost every year that he's there. I mean, it's just, I think that's his athleticism is obviously the most impressive thing about him.
Right.
That part is also what makes is one of the other impressive things where I'm like, man, this dude, if you have to be a sicko like Josh Allen work ethic to get to where he needs to get to, that's where I'm like, I don't know if I want to bet against that. Right.
Yeah, his teammates voted him captain twice. That's a huge thing at Alabama. When you get voted a captain, they put your fingerprints in cement and Denny walkway when walking into the stadium. So every year the captains get commemorated with that, and he's one of the few people to ever be a two-time captain, and that's with basically two different teams because after the 2023 season, almost 35 guys left after Saban between the portal, and then once Saban left, more guys jumped in the portal. So it's basically two different teams, and both times they voted that guy a captain and for his leadership ability. So yeah, man, it says a lot about that kid, the type of person he is.
And you mentioned it. I feel like he is the one that's getting kind of like, because it's not we think of Saban era, right? And we're like automatic national championship game invite, basically, right? That's what Alabama has been on. He happened to be the quarterback when that that stopped being the case. And then people forget, they almost beat the national champion that year.
Right.
That they didn't get to the national championship game.
Bro, they had a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. Yeah. And if they get that 4th and 2, the ball game's over. They had another chance at overtime before overtime to score a touchdown. People don't remember how close they were to winning a national championship in 2023. And as they stopped Georgia's like 40, 50 game winning streak in the SEC championship game the week before that. So he has proven that he can, play with the best teams in the country and beat the best teams in the country. The funny enough is it was the games against what you would consider the lesser teams is where he kind of faltered. The game against Tennessee, the game against, I wouldn't say Vanderbilt because he played very well that game, but the game against South Carolina where he didn't look his best, you put his tape against just the great teams that he played against in college football, and the only game that you come away kind of dissatisfied is the Texas game. Any LSU game, any Georgia game, that Michigan game, any game he played against a big-time school, he looked like he was one of the best players on the field, if not the best player. So to me, that says a lot as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's always a good time having Kai on. Kai, where can everybody find your work and get acquainted with what you do, man?
Best place is, Twitter, X, whatever you call it, at KYRON Samuels is where my handle is. And that's where you can get everything else. You can look at my writer profiles on Sports Illustrated. I'm covering USC, Oregon, and Colorado now. So they're NFL and college players covering those. So it's really busy with, if you got any, stuff you want to know about Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter and those guys, and then some of the USC guys coming up. And then obviously Oregon has a ton of draft prospects. I've been covering them all. So looking at those guys and pulling guard, my Substack is where I do more broad coverage. We're talking about like draft rankings and we're looking at some college football stuff, some NIL talk, and a little bit more broad subjects there as opposed to my assigned stuff. You can find me there at the pulling guard, and that's where you can find my work at. And Twitter is definitely the most spot. I'll be active on there. I like conversing with people and talking, and I'll post cut-ups of the draft prospects and all that good stuff. So find me there, and y'all keep supporting my guy, man.
All right, man. You mentioned Jalen Milroe getting to 235. What are you trying to tackle least? 4'3" Jalen Milroe, 215 pounds, full speed, or 225 Jalen Milroe coming at you like at 4'5"?
Hey, I'll take the skinnier version. Because if you got that 225, 230 coming at 4 or 5, that's hell on wheels. That's hell on wheels.
Shoulder just hurt thinking about it. But appreciate you coming on, Kai. Everybody else, have a great day. Have you better night. Peace.
Peace.